challenges that I had sort of in the organizing world was not being able to really do the kind of transformative work that I wanted to see in communities. I think a lot of us are, the fights that we're fighting against are just so big, and it has rehabilitated our ability to imagine what is this world that is different than the one we know today, and to be able to hear what the generations before us did to be resilient. A lot of the communities, including myself that I was working with, were disconnected, right, from their roots, from their home. And so I wanted to really create home, especially in a time where home is a very elusive thing. And I'm so excited to be part of this conversation because I think, you know, I've always been part of talking about international solidarity work, but really the history of colonization and occupation in both Palestine and Puerto Rico has been consistent and present for a very long time. And though it looks different in both places, I think there's a lot of similarities on how we resist. And yet there's some different forms of how we resist. And I think that, you know, if we are to fight this sort of common enemy of empire, we need to learn from each other. We need to have an exchange. And really, this is what today is about. I'm really excited to learn from my folks in Puerto Rico, some of the ways that they have really resisted occupation for a very long time. Cultural preservation of food as a way to exchange between people on the ground and people in diaspora, that is something that all of us have been impacted by, both here and the US. We're fighting the same government here, the US, single-handedly responsible for a lot of the plight that we face today. And so this conversation really came from this idea that actually originally we wanted to do a delegation of Puerto Rican activists actually going to Palestine and really going on the ground and talking, having an exchange between food activists, but obviously in this time, we're not able to do that. But I think that it's really important for us, even as activists, to engage in these conversations that are more generative and less extractive, right? So I think they said this in the dinner last night, and it really resonated with me, that what we're doing today is not a form of show, it's a form of exchange. It's a form of us sort of being vulnerable with one another, sharing what we know is our ancestral knowledge, but also being vulnerable and sharing what we don't know and really learning from each other. And we're calling everybody who is watching this to be a part of that and to be vulnerable with us. And we hope that by the end of this conversation, if people feel inspired, but also angry and compelled enough to take action and to support the amazing work that all of the folks in this room are doing today. So I'm just really excited to sort of host that conversation. I'm here in my bakery because my bakery is my home. And I'm just really excited to have this conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Gabriela, and she's going to walk us through what people can expect today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriela. Some people know me as Chef Gabriela, and I'm actually trying to release that term chef. It's my own process. And so today I'm just Gabriela, and I'm really here to listen and to be present. So I'm not cooking, I'm not doing anything. I'm really here to listen and learn and be in relationship with all of you today. We have had a few conversations before this to see like what juicy things are available to us. And we decided to really create this space as if we were in a kitchen together. Everyone's working on different things and we're all just hanging out, we're talking. The kitchen for so many different cultures around the world, for so many people, is a space where people do come together to heal, where they come together to learn, where they come together to love. And that's what we are here to do today. I love what you said, Reem, about we're here to learn. And in learning, we get to transform how we do our work. I founded a project, a company called Liberation Cuisine about 5-6 years ago. And the mission of Liberation Cuisine is to feed, to cook for frontline activists, movements for social change, healers, growers, people who are really doing the work. And in this moment where we are right now, it needs to change. Liberation Cuisine needs to evolve with the collective. So I'm really excited to see what the exchange today offers, even for myself and how I do my work, and for all of us, how we continue to show up. We are going to be all together for our conversation, for our kitchen dialogue today. And we also invite you all to ask us questions. So you can ask questions by going to slido.com. That is SLIDO.com. And when you get there, it's going to be like a green and black screen. And there's a little square that says join as a participant. And in that box, you're going to put in one word, you're going to put in seeds of power, SEEDSOFPOWER. And then that'll take you to a new sort of screen where you can type in any questions. That'll get screened to us. And what I'm going to be doing is listening and weaving in those questions for the group so that we can be in a larger conversation with all of you. And so, as we enter into our dialogue, we want to collectively take a moment to acknowledge the lands that we are all on. We are all streaming in from different parts of the world, from diasporas, from Borikén, from Turtle Island, from the Palestinian diaspora. And even when we are in diaspora, we are on occupied lands. We are in lands where people have been displaced. We are in lands where we get to and we must honor the plants, the ingredients, the seeds, and we get to bring in the indigenous people of these places to be with us as we continue to move forward. So I will begin by saying that I reside in, and I'm tuning in from a land that was cared for and in deep relationship with the Lenape people. This land was stolen and Lenape people were displaced. I bring this to the forefront of my mind and my heart so that I never forget this immense loss and so that I can be part of a reparative future.
Thank you, Gabriela.
And so if folks can go around and maybe introduce their name and their pronoun and share their own land acknowledgement. We'll start with Val.
Hi, everyone. I'm really grateful to be here today. My name is Pau Lebron Guzman. My pronouns are they, them, ella, and ellos. I am a diasporic, body trans, dopey queer, and I'm on and have familial ties and grow foods on Lenape Hoking territory of the Lenape Delaware people. I grow food with shared seeds from across the Arawak, Taino, and Palestinian lands, active liberation, and to continue legacies. I'm inspired by the recent cultivation of the language justice and beyond gathering. I take a moment to acknowledge the many forms of language and communication that honor and preserve our cultures. This conversation for me is an act of radical connection to combat the legacies of violence and displacement that have not only separated us, but also brings us together today. It's ongoing validation of the through stories that dismantle the settlements that oppress us. And with food, we communicate to link traditions, rituals, and share meanings with others.
Diaspora. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm cultivating the land of the Haudenosaunee people, indigenous to this region of Turtle Island, as I plant seeds saved by countless generations of Palestinian people who stewarded the now occupied lands of Palestine. I honor the legacy of all ancestral keepers of the earth, who in their great wisdom and care preserve the land and nurture all beings with their understanding of the interrelatedness of life. And I'm super grateful to be here with everyone. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Layla. I'm so happy to join you with this incredibly powerful group of people. At the moment, I'm actually passing through and visiting Western North Carolina, so Asheville and Bryson City. And I would like to acknowledge that I'm here visiting the traditional land of the Cherokee, this land through the generations and from which they were forcibly removed. I pay my respect to the elders, both past and present, and I recognize I'm here as a visitor, and I recognize our common struggle against erasure and our common struggle towards liberation.
Hola, mi nombre es Verónica, me dicen Vero Vero. Soy cocinera, con muy honra.
I'm Lex, she and her pronouns. Mi nombre es Tara, mis pronombres son ella, she, her, they. Estamos ahora mismo en Borikén, en Tierra Taína, y gracias a todas las personas que han dejado un legado de sobrevivencia y también abundancia, hoy día podemos decir que hemos crecido y cosechado y estar rodeados de todas las plantas y todos los seres que aquí habitan. Y agradecemos a nuestras personas mayores, específicamente a nuestros vecinos, quienes nos han enseñado a utilizar muchos de los ingredientes que cocinamos para esta noche.
Hi again, my name is Reem, she and her pronouns, and I am here in California on Ohlone land, a land that was cultivated and enriched by generations of indigenous Ohlone people who have witnessed the expulsion, genocide, and cultural erasure of subsequent generations, but are still steadfast in their fight for their liberation and sovereignty. Our kin are connected in our collective fight for land and liberation. In Arabic, we call this samud, steadfast resilience, which describes Palestinians in their struggle for liberation. Thank you all. So I just want to acknowledge the breadth of space and lineage we take up. And it's really, really powerful. And I want to kick us off by really talking about why we're all here. What drew us to this conversation today? You know, a lot of us sort of have intersected with food and sort of the larger struggle for liberation. I know for me, I have been connected with a lot of organizers on the ground, but it wasn't until 5 or 6 years ago that I found my way to food as a way to connect to the struggle. You know, for Palestinians, our food is one of the last things that is our language, is our marker for existence. And there is a very intentional invisibilization of our food, which really is part of our ethnic cleansing. And so the fight to learn about my roots, to learn about the food, and to share it with other people has been part of my resistance for the last 5 or 6 years. But I'm only just now starting to get to know the depth of how food is just at the intersection of everything in land and liberation struggle. So I want to hear more from the chefs and activists in this conversation, sort of what brought you to this conversation, and how, talk a little bit about your work and how you see it as connected to all of this.
I mean, I guess I can start since we don't want awkward silences, right? All right. So, by the way, I didn't introduce my little helper. This is Malak, my third, and she wanted to, in the last minute, appear with me. So I didn't mention at the beginning, but those of you who know me are familiar, know that I'm from Gaza originally. And so much of what Reem was saying obviously resonates. But, you know, I was reflecting a little bit on this idea of, you know, food, culinary resistance, identity, and so on. And, you know, and what you were saying about vulnerability. And I think this kind of hits home with me because I think, you know, speaking on behalf of myself and many other Palestinians, it's not like this is something we naturally sort of are born and understand the ways of the land and the food. And, you know, I know I certainly wasn't, as a Palestinian raised in diaspora, different parts of the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, coming to the US, I always craved this knowledge that seemed so natural or inherent. And I was like, why don't I have it? And it wasn't until I got much older, and I almost felt embarrassed to like admit, I don't know how za'atar is grown, right? Like, I don't know a lot of these things. Where does sumat, where do you, and it wasn't until I was much older that I finally sort of, you know, was sort of comfortable with that and understood that this is part of what it means to be Palestinian, is this, both this invisibilization, right, of our culinary heritage and everything else, our connection to the land, the, you know, forced removal, part and parcel of that was to target these aspects, right? These things that connected us to the land by imposing fines on foraging for za'atar or akub thistles or whatever, such that, you know, with this knowledge, then the connection to the land disappears as well. And so like Reem, in an older age, I've slowly been trying to reconnect myself and my children to the land through the seeds, through the food. And I'm really anxious as well to build on this and connect with other communities as well, and learn together and see how we can use this to further our struggles. And I'll just end by saying, you'll see me pounding and mashing, and what I'm going to be making today, as everyone else is speaking, is a Palestinian, you know, I like to refer to it as a kind of Palestinian salsa. It's famous in Gaza. And we make it in this beautiful clay mortar and lemonwood pestle that I got from Gaza. And it's just the season for it. I'm using these beautiful, very appropriate Cherokee purple tomatoes. And the origin of the seed is from this region where I'm visiting now. And this actually grew it in my garden. And these beautiful peppers as well, and dill and some dill seeds. So you'll see me mashing all of those components together. Gaza's cuisine tends to be very fiery and hot. And I actually often compare certain elements of it to a lot of like Puerto Rican cuisine as well. And as those of you know, there's 3 or 4 generations of Palestinians living there. So I'll shut up for now because I can keep going for a long time, and I'll let someone else take it from here.
So I'm just gonna go in and say we're here right now. We seemed really relaxed. We're probably very exhausted. We really wanted to cook at the land that we live on half of the time, but we don't have electricity nor Wi-Fi. So we were kind of just, a little bit caught between decision making. So we decided to show up in like really nice attire, but today we dedicated our day to all of the people that are sharing screens with us today, and energy. And so we cooked a meal and I recorded it to be able to just share a little bit of what we've done, and with some of the ingredients using Palestinian recipes just as like a prompt, but with anything that we could find around. and forage. So I don't know. It's about 6 minutes of a video. I didn't edit it, so sorry if there's mistakes. But this is for everybody else, and I hope you enjoy it.
Forms. We have, so the Palestinian summer squash was actually homegrown. It is from Palestinian summer squash seeds that were gifted to us during the pandemic, and they were gifted to our home. And before I go further, I wanted to introduce my household, my comrades and housemates. We have Lore, Camille, and Oscar. We have been cultivating a collective home. And during the pandemic specifically, these seeds were gifted to us and they resonated with us. And it was one of the things that most excited us to grow. And I've been in relationship to this land and our backyard here in Crown Heights since like 2014, and have been cultivating this land, have not lived here necessarily, but in relationship to this land, have come back. And now living here, specifically during pandemic times, really worked to own food, as I've always done. I am an organizer, a cultural organizer. I grow food. I'm a cook. I'm also a language worker. And for me, this is really important. And this particular event really resonated with me because it really intersects all of those things, but really centers food, and centers food as ways in which we can connect, in which we can really affirm our autonomy and can move and communicate together and share things together. So I made this summer squash, this Palestinian summer squash. This is actually the first harvest of it. And with that, I filled it with a serenata de bacalao. So codfish serenata. I'm not going to translate that. There's no translation. And in particular, this is really, and you will hear all the Crown Heights and Brooklyn noises as we do this, including fireworks and motorcycles. It is just what it is. But the serenata de bacalao in particular is a dish that my grandmother always made. And it was actually a colonial dish originally because the preservation of fish was brought to the Caribbean, the codfish particularly being from Norway or Europe and being brought over here to talk about how like this fish was the most important and needed to be preserved. But then they left this tradition with us and it has transformed. And now it has transformed to a very particular Caribbean tradition that really ties the Antillane traditions of saltfish and codfish. And my grandmother always cooks it, and it's like our go-to dish to always ask her to cook us. And that's been, as someone who's diasporic, been when I lived in Florida, when I lived in Virginia, when I lived in DC, when we like lived in Spain for a hot second. Now that I've been in New York and my family has been in New York for so long, my grandma always cooks that dish and it's always present. So I really felt the need to bring it back. We also have barrilito, real rum from Puerto Rico, straight from Bayamon. We have a pique, which is a hot sauce and hot. And an herb sauce from everything that also grew here from local farmers. And this is probably a typical meal that we share usually in the house. And for me, it really connected a lot of pieces. It connected my own heritage, my own culture, what has transformed, what grows here, what I'm carrying with me, and what I like to share with other folks.
I am also cooking with squash, although I'm very jealous of Pal having Palestinian squash. I'm cooking with some local summer squash here in upstate New York. I also am growing some Palestinian squash from seeds that I brought back from Palestine last time I was there 2 years ago, that were given to me by Vivian Sansour, who started the Palestinian Heirloom Seed Library that is located outside of Bethlehem. And she was actually originally going to join us for this, but it's 2:30 in the morning in Palestine, so not the best time for her. But I'm happy to be growing her seeds, which, as some of my peers have touched on, is a really important part of our solidarity and our resistance in the invisibilization of Indigenous peoples by continuing to use and save our seeds and grow our traditional foods. We're continuing the traditions of the people that these colonial empires are trying to erase. I'm really grateful because although I'm not cooking with it, I have these Palestinian white cucumbers that I brought back from last time. And these are one of the only things I've eaten out of my garden so far this year. Our season's a little bit later upstate, but they're sweet and they're perfect and they're beautiful. And I'm so happy to have them. They bring me such a joy and a connection to the land that truly feels deep within me. And I think everyone can probably resonate with that. And that's part of why I came to working with food. I'm an artist and a chef, for whatever that means now, but I'm an artist and a chef, and for me, food has always represented a language that transcends any sort of barriers, that you truly can just understand on a visceral level. And I think that through accessing these conversations via food, we're able to create so much more in the way of community. Beyond just sharing recipes and ideas, we're sharing things on a truly deep level that really unites us. And that's part of what has been really hopeful and helpful for me in continuing this kind of work of being in solidarity with others on this kind of plane. And so, yeah, today I'm carving out these Palestinian-ish squash with a traditional tool that we use. It's kind of like I don't know what to call this. Reem, you might know the name. I forgot it.
The core,
Man'ara. It's called a man'ara.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Man'ara.
Core, right? Like it's a squash core, and they have these like modern spins on them. Have you seen the modern ones that look like little drills? Look, I always used to say I wanted to create one that's like a battery operated one that goes.
You can.
I'm like, I make so much money. Like it would make everyone's life so much easier. Right?
Well, yeah, I'm just delicately over here. What was that, Reem?
I was saying, I mean, I've seen some YouTube videos of Palestinians using the drills, like that's resilience right there. You just
that's
use
modern.
what you have, right? Yeah.
Truly. I'm lucky that I have one of these, but I wish, next time I'll bring out the drill.
I actually brought the ones that I grew because I'm growing them as well in my garden. And I don't know about you guys, but they're notoriously hard to grow because they succumb to powdery mildew more than any other squash in my garden. But
don't tell me
this year
that.
I was able to grow a few successfully, and I brought them. I don't mean to scare you, but this was the first year I managed to get a good harvest. And we actually went hiking yesterday and we fried them we do a very simple traditional summer dish with them, which is you can cut them in thick slices and fry them in olive oil with garlic and basil and really rich olive oil.
So this actually, this is a question that's been mulling in my mind as sort of approaching this conversation, but it feels like very relevant to this Kusa drilling conversation, which is that, our people have been resilient for a long time in the face of occupation, with very little economic resources and able to sort of do the impossible. And I want to bring some of that into the space. I know for Palestinians, I think about even the ways food is weaponized against us and the way we take it back and sort of assert our power, right? Like you think about the boycotts in 1987 Intifada when Palestinians were like, you know what, we're not going to sell any of this. We're just going to make our food for our own people. And, there's all these sort of examples of people who've used food as an organizing tool. And I want to hear from folks, are there things, I'm especially interested to hear in Boricua what some of the history of how food has been used as a tool for organizing. What are some of the things that have inspired folks?
While someone is thinking to speak, I'm just going to say, Pau, you had me at fermented for a year chili peppers. I can't get that out of my mind.
No, I saw your eyes.
Did you see me go, woo? And I'm expecting a little bottle of that. So I will share with you in exchange some fermented Gaza chili paste that I brought back with me from the fall. So, that's a serious business. I had to smuggle it out at the risk of being arrested, by the way. So
then I will send you everything that you'd like. I have plenty to share. But Rima, on that note, I think everything that you say is it's so interesting because the parallel is so strong, it's so present, it's so real.
Yeah.
I mean, Gabriela can also speak to this, and I know we've collaborated in so many ways, and Tara as well. But I think that the one thing that centers like Puerto Rico organizing, Borikén organizing has been food. I think that like the weaponized idea is so important because I think that's the tactic in which the empires use to separate us, right? To make us dependent. And I think that's been the case in Puerto Rico. When we import the majority of our food, and I know that's something that's been shared often and people know about it, but the disconnection once industrialization happened, the disconnection with growing our own food, and now our organic response to mutual aid has been food. Food has been central, community kitchens popping everywhere, solidarity work from the diaspora, like focusing on food. In my case, particularly when the Hurricane Maria happened, I couldn't imagine anything else. For me, it was very clear that food was the way in which I could play a role to be in solidarity and to support. And we tried to send food in whatever way we could, which was preserved in that case. And we sent food preserved, and we did workshops around preservation, which is something that was like lost or people didn't connect necessarily. When we talk about pique and the preserved chilies for a year, that's a tradition in Puerto Rico that's always been. And people don't necessarily connect that. And I think these are conversations that we need to have for our own perseverance and to continue our culture. But with mutual aid projects, food has always been central, and that's happening in the diaspora and within the islands. And and with Gabriela in the work that we've done together and collaborated, food has always been central. It's actually what brought us together. So I think that's really, really key to like what mutual aid looks like, and I think the parallels that we really share.
Yeah, I feel like I gotta jump in here, Pao.
Yeah, do it.
I feel like food has made us together like a weapon. Like it's like built us up to be stronger, and really like feed and mobilize in a way that we're more powerful than if we were like separate. Which is the amazing thing about food, like that it can bring people together. And what is organizing if it's not bringing people together to be more powerful? I also just want to name like the Centros de Apoyo Mutuo, like the mutual aid groups that Pao was talking about in Puerto Rico. We're opening all around the island. And, it was at a time where the food was not getting to, it wasn't getting to people right after Hurricane Maria, where FEMA was not showing up. And it's really that idea of you're in a colony, and it's like, yeah, that colonizer, that person's not coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save you. Like, in addition to, we want to think of it as a tool to move us forward. And also, like, in those moments of emergency, it needs to be our number one plan. It can't be a secondary plan of what do we do if no one shows up, but like the first plan needs to be, how are we organizing our food? How are we growing the seeds? How are we sharing? And I'm gonna send it right over to Tara, because Tara's really, really doing that work of like setting that up so that we're ready to go.
And I'm only doing a part of that work, honestly. This is really the person that is doing the real work related to the food. And it's very seldomly that Vero wants to speak. So I'm like, yes, please speak.
Después del huracán María, pues, la gente se dio cuenta que realmente nuestra comida tradicional, la vianda, que es una comida que es una ¿cómo se dice? Una cosecha que es resistente a nuestros huracanes, a nuestros desastres naturales. Y después de Huracán María y pues también estos terremotos, todas estas cosas, pues han salido un montón de proyectos que se han desarrollado a través solamente de nuestra cosecha, de lo que nosotros producimos. Así que esto se hace una resistencia y esto se hace que la gente se dé cuenta que nuestra comida, nuestros antepasados sabían lo que hacían y por eso ellos sobrevivían todo esto. Entonces, pues estamos aprendiendo eso y los jóvenes están aprendiendo eso y pues solamente estamos, buscamos semillas del mundo para poder desarrollarlas, pero realmente la semilla más resistente es la nuestra, es la de nuestro suelo, es la que el suelo la acepta, la desarrolla y pues yo creo que esa es la forma en que nosotros podemos enseñarle al futuro que
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, just to add to that, you know, a lot of what Veto's saying that resonates so much with me is that because of our food and because of all of these crops that we have gotten to know, a lot of which don't even fall into commercial markets, they're very perishable. They're not necessarily fitting into, you know, a capitalist, huge global food system. There are traditional plants and they are food medicine. They're the ones that have also been the most supportive in these moments, you know, post-hurricane, post-earthquakes. These plants have provided us with something that I can't think or fathom, you know, to be able to continue without this, you know, even through these moments right now.
And I'm going to jump in here because those who are with us in other spaces have an interpretation happening, but the folks in this small little group here who don't speak Spanish do not. So I just want to sort of echo Vero, you let me know if I'm missing something, but Vero was talking about sort of these root vegetables that are underground, that grow underground, and like it's this moment where we're realizing that our traditional foods are the ones that are most resilient. Like they're resilient against hurricanes. When a hurricane comes, that root vegetable is still there and it's still nourishment that you have. And that reminder that our food, like Dara said, is medicine, and that our seeds are the seeds, not just the only seeds, right? But are definitely need to be seeds that are continued and continue to be grown, because our ancestors knew what they were doing, which Vero didn't say this, but Vero, I was thinking of like when I've seen the sort of hurricane shelters that people used to make, they didn't have concrete homes and they would dig underground, and that was where they would be safe from hurricane. It's like they also were listening to the plants and saying, wait, this root vegetable knows what's up. Like, let's get underground with that vegetable because they survive these hurricanes. So it's like, how do we listen to food in that way as well?
And I think, how is this, I think for like Amani and Layla, like, how is this complicated by the fact that in Palestine, I mean, I don't even know what the resilient plants are. I know for sure that the Israeli government doesn't allow us to forage, raises our farms, like, and then you complicate it by the fact that we're doing food justice work in diaspora, and a lot of us, I mean, including myself, cannot actually go back to Palestine. Can you, yeah.
Well, when I was listening to you talk about kind of connecting with these roots and the wisdom of these roots, I couldn't help but think about how I came to be a forager in my later years by learning about wild plants through how my grandparents or my parents would deal with plants or experience plants on just kind of normal day-to-day errands here in the United States, where we would go to the grocery store and my grandmother would want to pull over so we could pick up mallow or khobeze so that she could make that, which is like a super nutritious thing. And for me as a person who cultivates and seeds, but also searches for wild sustenance, I've kind of always thought about how the resiliency of these so-called weeds are so connected to diasporic peoples, where these things that some communities might view as noxious weeds like dandelion or whatever are actually filled with so much sustenance and beauty on so many levels. And through learning about these plants and the ways that they can sustain us and teach us and work with us, I just can't help but think about how that's so connected to our resiliency as people. So for me, that's like kind of how I connect with it. And I know, like, you know, back home, technically we're not allowed to forage. I mean, last time I was back home, I was with my aunt picking grape leaves off of a vine on our land, but right behind us is a observation tower that has soldiers in it who immediately, if they see you on your own land picking your own leaves to make rolled grape leaves, are threatening to shoot you. But they just kind of ignore them and pick the leaves anyway, because what else can you do? You have to continue to be who you are and resist that kind of bullying or whatever, for lack of a stronger word, while you're just doing what you need to do to survive, much like these plants that have engineered themselves to be able to survive any kind of condition, whether it's poor soil or by having a proliferation of seeds that allows them to just spread widely.
And Manny, in tune with what you're saying, you know, what I learned when I was doing the research for my book, you know, and speaking to people from all life, including those elders still remembered and survived the Nakba, the Palestinian exodus and the forced removal and displacement from their homes, was that it was precisely these weeds and, you know, wild greens and so forth that sustained them during the most difficult months of exile, right? So like Betla, also known as purslane, was you know, was and still is considered sort of like a power green, right? It has the highest amount of plant-based omega-3s and other goodies. That was what they consumed and what they were surviving on through those months until they were able to find shelter. And I, in a way, like honor that legacy and that history when I am foraging and consuming these things. I feel like it connects us in a way. And we don't, I don't want to use the word like luxury, but have that luxury, a lot of us Palestinians, of being able to visit, right? Like, you know, I can only go to Gaza. It was only by good fortune that this fall, through a little program with the World Food Program, that I was allowed to actually go to other parts of Palestine, which was a small miracle. My husband has never set foot, right? And yet we're all sort of Palestinian in our own ways, like, you know, and I always found that really interesting. But it makes me also kind of sad when I hear that somebody has been able to visit, you know, Ramallah or Jalil or any of these towns and villages. You know, it makes me a little sad. Like, I'm like, I want to be able to visit. I want to be able to go and connect more and, you know, work the earth and taste the land and so on and so forth. And so in that way, I feel like being able to, you know, initially write about it in the book, preserve this knowledge, but also perpetuate it through sort of simple acts of cooking, either with my children, with other people, with planting, is so powerful. Like, I know initially, I remember when I started off, I thought I was kind of like not so comfortable with the idea, you know, like so often in the Middle East, it's like, what do you do? Exactly. And it's hard for me to encapsulate that. Like, oh, you cook, or you know, are you a chef? Are you, and I'm not really like any of those things. It's always hard for me to find kind of a term to describe, but I consider it really the ultimate form. Like you were describing, just being able to pick those grape leaves in and of itself is the ultimate act of resistance to me, right? Existing is resistance in the context of Palestine. Cooking is resistance. Being able to just do these simple things, to me, that can be so much more powerful than any. I mean, there's all different sorts of resistance. I'm not to lessen from any particular one, but I feel this is just as important in a sense. And so on that note, we finished, Malak helped me finish the degga, the Palestinian, the Gazan salad, and you can see it has this beautiful shimmery gleam from the really thick layer that goes on top. But it's amazing. I wish you guys could all taste it with me here. It has just the right amount of heat and a little squeeze of these fresh limes from my friend's garden, and these beautiful peppers and the Cherokee purple tomatoes. So I'm really happy. I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I'm curious sort of in hearing some of the ways, there's so many similarities in the ways that we organize. Um, Sort of what are some of the challenges? I think one of the things that we talk about a lot sort of in Palestinian organizing around food waste is the sort of NGOization, right? All these like aid um, organizations coming in and really squashing a people's movement to be able to take care of themselves. Um, do you all sort of in the Boricén context, is that something that folks grapple with?
I can
How can we learn from each other?
Yeah, it's a really difficult subject for me because it's I've actually gone through a lot of trauma because of it in the past few years, specifically post Maria. And one of the things that I just realized, and I'm kind of living in this situation right now, is I actually run a nonprofit organization. I started it as a for-profit 10 years ago, and the project has since evolved. Um, but all of that I can speak about, for hours, and all of the trajectory of the past 10 years. But really what's in my heart right now and what I'm grappling with is I'm actually learning from people that are not connected to any kind of social media. They're actually not activists. They're never going to be in an article. They're my elders and they're my neighbors, and they have very basic, terms sometimes. And I might have better, but I'm not even as good with terms than many other people. And I'm also feeling like very much that I'm learning. And I'm just trying to create a balance between having the resources and knowledge and understanding the world of nonprofits as something that honestly the revolution will not be funded, it will not be televised. And so I'm just dedicating a lot of energy right now to just being in place, right? To being grateful to the fact that I do have access to this land, to being grateful that I have these neighbors. And I've actually gone down, a lot in, the regular workload, because now I'm just trying to be on the farm and I'm trying to learn how to pour cement, and I'm growing these things and visiting my neighbor. And, I don't know, that's just kind of something that I'm sharing, as I think that it's really important to continue to do the work. I'm in a point right now where conversations become too convoluted and long for me. I'd rather just, be silent and do some work. So it's just something that I think has also resonated with a lot of people in Puerto Rico post Maria, where we realize that it's not only the government that's not going to be the best supporters of us, it's also NGOs, and there's a huge invasion of NGOs right now on the island, and a lot of money is being gatekept and all that stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's just something that I'm just thinking a lot of my elders and the neighbors and the tools that they're showing me, and how I can bring that into this space, but also how I need to really disconnect from a lot of that as well.
And I want to take a quick moment to remind folks who maybe joined a little bit later that we are inviting questions from you all, from folks who are tuning in. And you can do that by going to slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. And then you'll see a square where you can put you'll put the word seeds of power, and that'll take you to a page where you can type in a question, and it'll come into us on our end, and we can answer some questions. And that I also just wanted to piggyback off of that as someone who's not in Puerto Rico, as someone who's in the diaspora, really thinking about this NGO conversation. Not only am I in the diaspora, I'm in the United States, and I'm in New York City, which is like the capital of capitalism, or a capital of capitalism. And being here, it's like so much of the organizing is through NGOs. And me and Pau both have been really thinking about how do we organize in Puerto Rico and Borikén, how do we organize in New York, how do we build bridges? And it is really important to be mindful of who we bring into conversations, who we bring into spaces. And sometimes it's like, no, you can't, I'm not gonna give you that person's contact to do a video of them for 5 minutes and nothing happens out of it. Like I can't play that role, even if the intentions are good, and inviting like more depth. And it's like, what is our responsibility of people in all different places to protect a land and a people, so that we can get free, you know?
Yeah, and
Dale, Pau.
yeah, just to ask that, I think it's really interesting because my relationship to New York, it's a deep relationship because my whole like that side of the family is from New York. But I do see New York and New York City as maybe a capital of capitalism, but the farthest from the U.S. government. So I do see like a lot of pockets of resistance within New York City, and I've seen a lot of organizing, mutual aid during this time, and mutual aid that really has like wanted to parallel a lot of the mutual aid that's happened in Puerto Rico. That's the comedores sociales that happened after the Hurricane Maria, and that also happened right now with delivering of groceries. And here, and a lot of the work that we've been doing within like our connections to like food networks around delivering groceries, and I'm connected to a local very grassroots, and to debunk the idea of just NGOs or nonprofits, there's also lots of grassroots groups that are popping up to try to reflect the local identities of Diasporicans or first or second generation Ricans, or Neo-Ricans, of like Boricans. There's all the dimensions and all the levels of diaspora that exist, and I think that's really powerful and important to recognize. And I've seen a lot of that organizing, for instance, with a group that I work with closely, New York Boricua Resistance, NYBR. We've been doing food distributions every Sunday, and we're specifically focusing them on areas that have large Puerto Rican or Neo-Rican communities. And this is without any nonprofit, without any NGO. This is just like the people organizing. And I feel like that parallels and really mirrors a lot of what happens in Puerto Rico. And just bringing it back to the solidarity and where we've seen historically the solidarity with Puerto Rico and Palestine, it was our freedom fighters, right? And our political prisoners that really were fighting for like Palestinian liberation. And I think that's where we need to get, like where I see our future going, like where we have like the empires have successfully, we could say, separated us, and where we need to refocus our energies, and where I see opportunities for us to have moments like this where we share through all the means, through all the ways, intersections that we find ourselves in, and where we continue that movement for liberation, and where we see possibilities for the future. And that's where I really want to bring it towards, because I think that's where we're moving towards. And I think this is just one step in that direction.
Leila,
Did you say Leila?
Yeah, I saw that you were unmuting, so I was wanting to make sure if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah, no, I just was gonna, I mean, the NGO question is an interesting one because as many of you know, in Palestine and specifically in Gaza, there's a total like saturation of NGOs. In fact, I remember writing like my thesis about it in college years ago, because it's so interesting because they actually form a pseudo government. There's so many that in the absence of an official, government and a sovereign state, Palestinians like turn to the NGO sector as their pseudo government. And it was always kind of like a sort of tenuous relationship because, like you were saying, they're the gatekeepers, they, have other interests and so on and so forth. But at the same time, a lot of the agricultural like unions and women's cooperatives worked closely with the NGOs, would receive their funding from there. The other two like major branches that are considered sort of the overseeing authorities is UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees, that oversees the service and care of like 80% of the population of Gaza. And then, of course, the Palestinian Authority, which has changed hands in government so many times and towards which there's a lot of mistrust. And then, of course, ultimately, finally, the fourth being the the Israeli occupying forces, right? So you have all of these different layers, and the NGO sector does play a significant role there. And that is, you know, I think impossible to diminish. It's hard, right? Because it depends on the political climate, but at certain months or certain years, people will distrust like the UN more, or ultimately always like the Israeli occupying force more, or the PA more. But the NGO sector is kind of like the most stable one and is considered. But again, like especially the bigger ones that are, you know, Western funded and so forth, people are always like somewhat suspicious. And at a certain point, they signed a document saying that they would not accept funding from USAID organizations or the organizations that received funding from the USAID, or they wouldn't receive grants or anything like that. I think this was in early 2000. A branch of the overseeing all of the NGO sector signed on to this, just to sort of have their sort of values and aligning principles.
And we're getting some questions from folks, and I see a few.
One more thing, right?
You're on mute, Leila.
No, I didn't want to continue. I didn't want to disrupt. I was just going to say it does. The one thing that I will say, and I'm sure this is the same case for Puerto Rico, is that it breeds dependency, right? And this is an unfortunate consequence that we've seen. And it's really very unfortunate and sad. Every time I go there, I see it more and more. I mean, it really disrupts in a bad way. Not in a disrupt is often used in a positive context. The natural context and the ability of the population to sustain themselves and to learn to rely and farm and all this. Instead, the focus turns to, you know, which is the latest NGO we can kind of apply and get some kind of, and on one hand, you don't blame people. On the other, you're like, you know, it kind of makes you cringe and you think like, there's got to be a better way, right? Or like,
yeah, and I think that point of dependency kind of actually brings us right to some of the questions that are coming in, where folks are asking a little bit about like the how to do these things. So someone is asking like, how do we get involved with some grassroots movements? Particularly they're asking about in Puerto Rico, but like, how do you really get tapped in with grassroots folks? And then how do you like cook maybe plant-based or vegan dishes and still be in integrity with a culture? And how do you feed movements that maybe you're not directly a part of, without maybe like creating something that doesn't quite feel right, or maybe like imposing something that shouldn't be imposed? So there's a few questions there about how to, and those are some of the specifics I thought I would throw out there and see what y'all think about that. How to get involved and break that dependency.
I mean, I would also love to learn and hear the how-tos, because so often, you know, we as organizers and activists can be so hypercritical of people who do ask, like, how can we help or what can we do? And I think often I and this may be just on social media, I often see people's like reaction being like that's not my responsibility to tell you. And like, I get that, but I'm also like, if people are genuinely interested in learning and growing and wanting to, it's like, why can't we provide good resources? You know what I mean? I don't know, maybe it's just me. I just feel like, you know, cut people some slack kind of thing. You know, if they're coming to you and asking and they do genuinely want to know, like, let's, you know, and that's an excellent way. Maybe let's come up with a, you know, kind of a clearinghouse or some like base reference where people can, you know, I mean, I would love to hear. So I'll pass the mic and listen in, and then I'll, you know.
Gabrielle, it might be nice to write the questions in the side so we could, or like to include them so we can reference them.
I'm just gonna do something real quick that I'm learning how to, which is save seeds, save your seeds. I'm learning. And the other thing that brings up to mind is that what we're trying to do also is figure out how to create just very small scaled ways to share resources. And that looks like different things in different places, and it'll work differently if you live in Brooklyn and want to be in support of Puerto Rico. or if you're in Puerto Rico and want to be in support of Puerto Rico, or if you want to support the diaspora in Brooklyn from Puerto Rico. I think one of the things is never forget where you are, and the community is the most important thing. And some of that is your physical community, but also my community is my queer community, and it's not necessarily only the place where I'm at. And I learn just as much. So I just want to point out that something that we're learning a lot about is how to create, a seed library, how to create a tool lending library, how to create a kitchen that's not for a restaurant, right? How to be able to, if a hurricane comes, that kitchen can still cook, and it's not this whole bureaucratic or dependent on electricity thing. So that's just something that I'm sharing. There are a lot of different ways that we can support each other, as long as we understand that we really need to start by supporting ourselves. And it doesn't have to be a huge idea. A seed library can start with literally you just taking the seeds from that white cucumber and sending them over here. And that's it.
Yeah. I think the point of intersectionality really resonates for me, of like really thinking about sort of where am I in relation to who, and wherever the work that you're doing. Like all of us have a role to play. And food is part of our daily lives in every single way, right? We all have to eat in some way. And so I feel like food is, for me, it's been an entryway to have these sort of really open and vulnerable conversations to talk about sort of the larger ecosystems around food, right? For me, I know as somebody who is actually a transplant in the Bay Area, Oakland is my home. It's been my home for 15 years now. I've been organizing in Oakland and San Francisco, but I know there's like generations after generations of Black and Latinx people who've lived here and who've been displaced from their homes. And so really, I feel like as a chef, and I think this is like related to that question of like, how do you cook for communities in a responsible way, is to understand the role that I play in the ecosystem here. My support of liberation for Black and Brown folks here in the U.S. is directly connected to my liberation in Palestine, right? That like I can't be free until folks here on the ground are free. And that's really what roots me in what I do, not just the food that I cook, but the sanctuary space I provide, the jobs that I provide. So really kind of understanding the community, like you said, there's a lot of intersectionality, and that could mean a lot of different things, right? And that in some places I have privilege, in other places I don't, And so how do I use the privilege that I do have to really be a responsible ally and to do solidarity from a more organic standpoint? So yeah, those are some of the things that I think about when I'm talking about sort of, communities don't just, you have to build that trust, right? You really have to understand that there are differences in our lineage. Though there are similarities, there are these sort of distinctions.
I'd like to speak to that first question about maintaining cultural integrity of food while addressing particular dietary choices or restrictions as far as like what eating meat. I think for me, a lot of the work that I've done as an artist and chef is relating to interpreting those kinds of traditions and recipes through my own personal lens. And maintaining integrity doesn't mean adhering to like a hegemony of like how a particular recipe is made. It's about translating it through your own experience. It doesn't mean that you lose integrity because you're not making something with the exact same ingredients that your ancestors did or a certain community did. It's about really respectfully integrating those things into your own experience. And if that for you, that means that you don't eat meat, then you can adapt those recipes however you'd like, and kind of understand that in our evolution as beings, that's a part of it. That's a part of our expression. That's a part of our sustenance. And that's a part of how we relate to the world around us and the plants around us. So you don't have to worry about adhering to something perfectly in order for it to have integrity. That just comes from you and your honesty and respect in how you proceed with yourself.
And I think that's like such a perfect metaphor to like how someone can be in solidarity and how someone can be a co-conspirator. I think that like if you don't have to like be exactly the same. You don't. There's so many ways in which you can be supportive, in which you can give in the ways that you you can recognize your own privilege. You can understand that your privilege looks different in different ways, as you said. I think that there's like many ways in which you can understand or even relate to the movements that are happening, and you know how to collaborate with people and how to meet them where they are and understand the similarities that you have, understand the differences that you have, and choose similar paths in order to co-conspire in like the movement. And I think that's really important. I think that when we're talking about where we can support, like where are the places, how, like we're talking about Borikén specifically, like a lot of it means giving funds. A lot of it means giving direct funds. It means like if the comedores are happening, then and they like are doing groceries, and we give direct funds. If as the diaspora we have access to something, give directly to that. I think it's just knowing and identifying where our privileges land and where we are able to give and where people can receive. And I think that meeting point is really important to identify, and that place in which you can identify with each other and you can relate. But I think that's, I think that's perfectly metaphorical to like understanding where we can collaborate and further support each other.
There's also some questions coming in about like this conversation between Amani's last sharing and Bao's last sharing kind of reminds me of this. There's a few questions around like, what have you learned from cooking or from specific recipes? What have you learned from growing or specific plants? Like how have you learned from being and working with food? And this isn't in the questions, but I might, remind just like within the context of organizing and within the context of building solidarity. What are some of those lessons?
Again, while people are thinking, I think I've always learned to respect the place and the people and the food, you know what I mean? And not assume that I somehow know how to do something better than someone else. I'm like, there's always somebody who knows how to do it better. And could you turn the lights? Oh, you are. Do it better or in a more interesting way, or I feel like there's not one like right way to make something, like Amani was saying. But I'm constantly kind of put in my place by, whenever I travel and visit people's homes or farms, how incredibly easy they make it seem to whip something up. Like they'll core, 10 kilos of kusa, the squash that Amani was doing. Yeah. In a matter of like what it would take me maybe hours, and they'll do them in like 15 minutes, right? And I remember once I was trying to help my mother-in-law. I'm like, this is something I can do, right? Like, and she lives in a refugee camp in Lebanon. And I'm like, let me do it. And she was like, no, just go relax. I'm like, no, I swear I can do this, right? And then I forgot that the squash they don't pick them big, right? You pick them, they're the size of your like pinky. And I was like, how do I do this? And I kept poking holes in them. And she was like, please don't do anymore. You'll help me by sitting down, right? and so basically the point is I always humble myself, and I feel like I can always learn something, And that, to me, that's the biggest lesson is if you just take the time to listen and observe, you'll learn so much. And I think we're in a time and place in society where it's the opposite, right? Who can scream louder and who can, shame the other person more, and who can, you get my drift, right? But I love also what you were saying earlier about like just being in the moment and being still and busying yourself. That's also been my lesson this spring, right? Is who cares if I'm not posting stuff or I'm not doing, something visible to what seems to people that you're actually, I feel like I've learned so much and I've accomplished so much in my own head, in my own space, in my own home, than I would have otherwise with just busying myself, like for the sake of busying myself. So.
Yeah, I would say like my cooking has really just like compelled me to ask more questions, you know? Like, had I not got into food, I would have never known about hindbeh. You know, like my mom was like, oh, dandelion greens? Like, we grew up on that. But like, I would have never known that because she didn't bring that to the forefront. Or the fish dishes that I make, you know. I actually, like, in making the fish dishes that I make at my restaurant, I'm actually preserving recipes that they no longer can make in Gaza because they can't access, the fishermen can't access their waterways, right? And so in a way, we are preserving food and keeping it, the integrity of it, in a way that in its original sort of creation genesis, it cannot be replicated. And there's something really powerful about that, sort of the conversations that I've been able to have just from my cooking, whether it's with my guests or older generation of Palestinians or my family. And it's caused me to be angry, to be honest. And it's caused me to ask more questions and seek more answers. And I think our food really does that, you know? Like, I think the conversations it starts sort of trickles into these other parts of our lives. So yeah, I feel like that's like a lesson that anybody should have. Like, when you have a meal, like, ask questions about that meal. You know, there is a story behind that meal. And sometimes it's not a pretty story, you know, but really encouraging people to ask questions.
I mean, speaking to your point, Reem, it was incredibly sad to visit Gaza again this fall, and after I had been absent for a few years, and just to see that people, most of the people I visited, literally had no recollection of how certain recipes were made. They have literally become extinct in their mind just over the course of the 10 years of the blockade. I mean, it was, you know, people can't recall a time when olive oil was used to actually cook meals with. Like, they thought I was crazy when I suggested this, and they were like, no, it's never made with olive oil. It's always made with, you know, the aid rationed, speaking of the aid organizations, like soy oil or sunflower. I'm like, no, it's not. And we get in this argument, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna argue about this, but it makes me so sad. And at the same time, you know, a small part of me feels fulfilled that I was able to contribute something before it was completely lost, right? I was always, again, so uncertain about what is it that I'm doing, and is this like totally insignificant, or who cares? And the more I hear this affirmation from people both abroad, like in diaspora, who've never had a chance to visit or cook these dishes, and then when I visit as well and notice that people are no longer making those dishes there as well, right? It constantly motivates me. It makes me sad, but it motivates me to do more, and also to build on that, right? Like, together, all of us here, how can we, you know, capitalize on this and do more? Like, come together, maybe form a collective, or like I was saying, some kind of document principles where we as chefs, artists, you know, and, you know, culinarians and so forth, come out and say, like, you know, this is unacceptable, and what can we do? What kind of stand can we take? Just as there are in other realms, in the, you know, artists and singers and other aspects, I think would be incredibly powerful.
Dale, puedes decir algo.
Ok, yo vengo de cocina fine dining en New York, New Orleans, New Hampshire, y nunca pensé que quería cocinar comida criolla.
So I came from working at fine dining for what, 20 years? I don't know.
25
restaurants
years.
In New York, New Orleans, New Hampshire, and different types of cuisines. And I never thought I would want to cook a lot of French. I never thought I was going to want to cook Puerto Rican food or comida criolla, Creole food.
Y cuando vine a Puerto Rico también fue como medio experimental. Un chef que hacía comida tradicional media puertorriqueña, pero no era técnica francesa y española.
So when I was even in Puerto Rico, I cooked for fine dining restaurants here, and it was always French influenced, or this influenced, or fusioned Puerto Rican food.
Sí, hasta que pues sí, traje un chef Alfredo Ayala, que me enseñó que la comida puertorriqueña era muy importante, pero igual seguía muy ruda con eso, como que no quería, como que no.
And so I met Alfredo Ayala, who really taught me, you know, how to start cooking Puerto Rican food, but I even though felt very raw on it.
Hasta que empecé en el departamento de la comida, que empecé a recibir cosechas boricuas y cosechas de, o sea, todo de Puerto Rico y solamente tenía que hacer todo de Puerto, o sea, todo tenía que hacer con unos pocos ingredientes, tenía que hacer tantas cosas que fue que me empecé a meter en este mundo de que ahora ya no puedo parar.
Until the kitchen that I was working at, in this case, in el departamento de la comida, and this also happens when you have mutual aid centers as well, which is just what I'm adding. You know, you get the ingredients from local farmers, and you don't really get to choose what that list of ingredients is. And so I started getting ingredients from different farmers, and then I just had it all in there. And that's when I just really got into cooking this food.
Y ya no creo que puedo tener las técnicas de todo lo que he aprendido durante todos estos años, pero obviamente no quiero hacer otra cosa que no sea con mi producto local.
And so I might have all the techniques in the world that I have been able to learn from other cuisines and really take in through my years of experience. But it really wasn't, it's not until, you know, this moment that when I get access to local ingredients is when I feel not only really pumped, but I'm able to actually learn. And none of that was as important as the ingredients themselves. And really focusing on what I have, which sometimes is very simple and very few, and improvising.
Sí.
So I think at this point we are going to start to wrap up. Yeah, Reem?
Yeah.
Beautiful. And we're gonna do just a short closing. If each person could offer a small nugget of hope or inspiration that they are leaving this conversation with, and we'll end on that note. And by short, I mean one word or one sentence or one phrase, so that we can be sure to honor folks' evening and our commitment to close. So one nugget of hope or inspiration.
I could start just because my nugget is here, a piece of the achayote squash bread that I did with the akawi cheese, some red onion and roasted corn. It is delicious. So I'm really feeling nourished. And it's just I'm just inspired by you all. Like I feel like sometimes it's impossible to get reconnected to the land, especially being in diaspora. And it's like in our blood, you know, and the work that everyone here is doing reminds me that I can do it too. So thank you.
Thank you, Reem. I think for me, I keep thinking about this idea of community being something transcendental almost now, especially in diaspora. And that gives me hope because like Reem was saying, sometimes it feels impossible, but like through being here with all of you and thinking of all these different ways that we can keep going, it feels almost transcendental. So thank you.
For me, I think it's very important. Everything that we've done today is for all of you, and also understanding that that is actually part of our healing and our work. And I want you to know that this is not an offering. This is something that has been very nourishing for us to be able to actually be in solidarity with other people and really, really learn from them. And I don't see any other way. And so it's a beautiful interdependency, I think. And I just want to really, really honor the amazing work that everybody here has been doing and sharing for weeks, because this is just an hour and a half conversation.
I am leaving with this idea that we started off with, that we're all learning and we're all growing, and that food is so forgiving, and that we can really hold that and walk with that lesson in the world to forgive and continue learning.
And I'll just say, you know, keep planting, keep growing, keep cooking. You know, every time you plant a seed, you're doing something incredible for your people, for your community. And don't let anyone define your story, right? Like, plant your own seed, own it, narrate your own story, because otherwise the others will do it for us, right? They're going to share our stories and redefine, rebrand, and appropriate our heritage.
Yeah, and I think with that, like I think each other's victories will really nourish the struggle. And I think while food is forgiving, I think food really makes us remember. And I think we remember food. And I think it's mutual. I want to remember that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
That
Let's get free, y'all.
Let's get free.
Woo!
Palestina libre!
Eso, Palestina libre.
Palestina.
Hasta salud.